Today we're going to take a look at the Pricebook module of FTx POS. To navigate there, from the dashboard, we'll click on Point of Sale, and then under Point of Sale, we have Pricebook here at the top. Under Pricebook, we have the Products tab, which will take us to the module containing all of our products as well as mass updates. This is where we'll go to add products, edit products, as well as our categories, which we'll get into at a moment. Discounts and buy downs will be covered in a separate training. Vendor parts will be where we'll access our vendor parts and vendor part kits. Failed UPC scans is one of the most efficient features in FTx POS. Basically, this is for if a store gets a delivery of a product and the cashier goes to scan the product and it is not already in the system, but it is an item that we carry, but did not get entered in already. When the cashier goes to scan the item and it's not bringing it up, a pop-up will be presented to the cashier stating that the UPC cannot be found. They will then be asked if they would like to send this information forward to corporate, and if they choose to, they'll be asked to give a description, a box to enter the price, as well as any additional notes needed. This prevents the employee from having to call up their manager asking why an item is not scanning. From there, we can take the actual UPC and convert it into a Pricebook item by whoever at corporate is responsible for that task. Under Products, we have several tabs here at the top, first being the Products tab, of course. This is where we go to view a list of our items, as well as add new items, and we can also delete items with the red X here. If we need to search for an item, we have the item name that we can look for. Specific departments can also be filtered. If we know the specific UPC, we can look that up as well. This tab allows us to filter to specific Pricebook zones to view specific pricing for that zone. Then we have an inactive and active filter if we wanted to see inactive items. For example, we'll pull up a Marlboro item and show the details page. When you're adding a new item, this page will mostly be the same, blank for you to fill out. We can use an item template to help streamline the process as well. An item template is basically a bucket of organization. That's the best way to describe it. So for example, within the full price cigs category, there's carton, Philip Morris, Marlboro. That way, if an item already has a structure built out and we want to use the same organization methods that it uses, but for other products, we have a button here at the top to save as template. If we already have a template, we can use a load template. This will take all the categories, manufacturers, brands, departments, etc., and will assign that information to the new item. This is to assist when creating items to make the process move faster. We also have a newer feature called tags, which is basically a sticker that you can apply to anything. Most modules in Control Center utilize tags, including reports, discounts, buy downs, etc. Anything that would have filters can also have a tag. If, for example, we wanted to run a company-wide sale on a particular set of items with a tag, you could set up a discount filtered for the items in that tag. All of our customers are different. Some customers utilize tags, some do not. Underneath that is the department that we want to assign this item. In the event we need to swap a department out with another, we can do so with the drop down here. Then we have our zone pricing and cost. Each of these lines is a different Pricebook zone, and whatever zone we need to edit the price or the cost or individually, we can do so here. If we wanted to update all the costs or prices, we can do that here as well. We have parent-child information. First is the parent product, and then the child product underneath, and we have buttons to open that as well. Underneath that, we have our quick tools. We have buttons to view the vendor parts attached to this item, as well as discounts and buy downs for this item. Next is change history. You have your date range selector here at the top where you can see all the changes that have been made to this UPC within a specific date range. With this, we have change time, the name of the product, UPC, cost, etc. We won't focus too much on the quick tool selection. Some of the other important ones include item detail analysis, which allows us to look through sales data, inventory data, and look through different charts for looking at this item. We also have item aliases if a UPC alias is needed for this item. Item aliases are used when an item may require more than one barcode. An example of this could be if the manufacturer of a product changes, but the product itself remains the same, or if there's a minor change in the product, such as a different colored package. Also, regular item analysis. With this, we can select our store in the top left, and we can view information related to that store within a specific time frame. Underneath our quick tools, we have sales statistics. This is to, at a glance, view the sales for that item yesterday, week to date, month to date, etc. This is followed by order information, which will tell you how many of this item is available company-wide. Next, we'll jump straight into mass updates. To start from the top, we see Queue Enabled. With this button enabled, we will be able to put it into our queue, and any changes we make will be added to our queue. As we add changes to the queue, there will be an additional button that will allow us to apply changes. If we press that, it will prompt us to apply it, including scheduling. Next, we have the Choose Actions button. Once we have our items selected within the grid, we can also hold Control to select multiple items and use Shift to fill. We can click this green button, and this is our mass update screen. At the top, we have our action, our price changes, our cost update, as well as utilities. Utilities opens up several other modules. For example, we can mass add products to buy downs, discounts, commissions, etc. We also have the option to send a to-do list to print labels for a list of items that we have selected. We can also mass add items to campaigns, price exceptions, item sales limits, etc. Next up is zone utilities for price and for cost. If we already have a well-established price zone and we need to update the cost and price of another zone to mimic it exactly, we can copy the pricing from one zone to another using this. Additionally, we can also add or subtract dollar amounts or percentages from the zone that we're copying from. Then we have uplifts. If we use uplifts, we have the ability to mass add products to an uplift. Next is update fields, which allows us to take a list of products that we have selected here on the left and change the type of information that we can select here. If we wanted to, we could change the department, the category, the tag, manufacturer and brand. Really, any information that detailed item analysis we pulled up earlier, all of this can be changed in mass updates. An example of what this could be used for is mass swapping departments. Perhaps a whole line of products was added by accident, or if you accept vendor orders via EDI and the vendor sends you a list of new products. By default, they'll all be categorized. With this feature, however, you can grab them from that department and mass assign them to their correct location. Next is min-max updates, so we can update our min-max values for reordering. Lastly, online order settings for e-commerce. Now that we've run through all of those options, after we type a value for the change, a little preview button is going to highlight here, and we have to click that before we're allowed to proceed further. This is going to show us a list of items that have been selected along with the new information that we are assigning. We have the option to select from a list of zones to also make this change located on the right side. Then here at the bottom, we have two green buttons. We have Apply Mass Update, which, if the queue is not enabled and we click Apply, it'll apply that change immediately. If the queue is enabled, however, it'll add these changes to the queue instead. Then we have Add to Apply List, which allows us to make changes and create a list of those changes and allows us to make other types of changes. For example, if you've done price changes but you don't need to send those immediately, but you also have to mass move products to a new department within the same motion, the Apply list allows you to keep adding changes to that list and apply it all at once when you're finished. You can also schedule it for a later time. This is to prevent having to make changes all at once. To demonstrate the queue, we can click Apply Mass Update, which will give us a pop-up that the changes are now going to be applied. If we make an extensive list of changes, this will break those down into different types on a line, such as standard price changes, one for utilities, department change, etc. We can then click Apply, and this will give us a success message. We can look through everything in the queue for specific items, or we can highlight everything, or even break it down individually. We can select what we need and then click Process Queue, or we can schedule it for a later date with the Schedule button. We can click the Schedule button and then choose which date and time we'd like to schedule that change for. If we make a mistake, we can go back to the Mass Update screen and under Undo Changes in the top left corner, highlight those changes and then undo them with this button. Next is our Schedule button and also the Compare Zones button. For example, we can take one price book and compare it to another. A very quick at a glance way of looking at any discrepancies between zones. And then of course we have our Vendor button, which is to filter options to specific vendors and any items that have vendor parts associated with those vendors. Underneath that, we have a search bar. With the current filter set it has right now, we can look for item names, for example, Marlboro, and it's going to pull up all of the items with the information that we typed. Additionally, with this blue Filter Type button, there's a drop-down that allows us to select different categories such as departments, manufacturers, vendor parts, etc. We can also choose if we want to only show active items, all items, only inactive items, or deleted items. Then we have our category tree, which allows us to expand out each category that contains the item that you wish to mass update. At the bottom of categories, we have Pricebook Zone Selection. Also, if we select everything and right-click, we'll be given a few additional options such as flagging entire product lines as inactive if you're getting rid of them, and also mass delete products. Next would be Price Exceptions. If we click this tab here, it's going to show us a list of all the existing price exceptions, but if we need to add a new one, we can do so by clicking Add New on the top right. This will take us to a screen where we can add different levels of pricing. So we can do a static price change, add a dollar amount for an existing amount, etc. We also have our item assignment and location assignment here on the top right. Then we have our categories, which we can go to configure here. If you ever need to edit a category you can do so here. Selecting categories on the left and right-clicking brings up a pop-up that lets us expand all, collapse all, or add to a new category. Adding a new category adds a major category, and we can also add a subcategory. We can also remove or rename a category. We can add a new category with the Add New Category button on the top right. Next to that, we have the Empty Categories button if we want to reassign all of our items, and then we can filter out our deleted categories if we have any of those. If we click on a category on the left, it will give us a list of all the products in that category. The next tab is Manufacturers, which will show us a list of existing manufacturers. We can edit them from this screen or delete them, as well as add a new one. All it asks for is the manufacturer's name and whether or not it's going to force a license. You can additionally add a description, but it is not required. The next tab is Brand. Very similarly to manufacturers, we're going to see a list of existing brands, edit, delete, or add new ones. Most of the tabs after mass updates and price exceptions are going to be configuring organization methods like categories, manufacturers, tags, etc. If we have new products that we want to link as parent-child, there's a module outside the actual product page. Here at the top, we can search for an item either by description or UPC and then highlight it. From the bottom grid, we can search in the search bar for the next item that we're trying to link and then highlight it. Then there's a number of units. For example, if it were a carton of cigarettes, we'd likely put 10. Then we have the link as child or link as parent buttons. So, the item we have selected will be linked to the item highlighted at the top as a parent or child, depending on which we select. If we make the bottom the parent, the top will be the child, vice versa. That concludes the products section. The next tab is Discounts and Buy-Downs. As mentioned, that will be a separate training session. With that, we'll move on to Vendor Parts. A vendor part is an item number or SKU that can be used to reorder product from a specific vendor. This is the number that the vendor uses on their end to identify the product. When making a new vendor part, we can click Add New on the top right corner. Here we can add a UPC for that item, a custom name if one is needed, the vendor that is providing the item, the number of units in the vendor part, as well as the part number. The part number is generally a SKU that is provided by the vendor for use internally, but is different than the UPC in our system. We can also assign this vendor part to specific locations as well as a price zone. Within the price zone, we can also adjust the cost, determine if the item can be ordered or not, if it's a manual order, the minimum quantity we can order, and if the item is returnable or not. Vendor part kits are a single part number that uses multiple UPCs together in one package. An example of this could be a special promotional display that contains multiple types of candy, rather than sending them to the store individually. The vendor would sell this display as one item. Creating a new vendor part kit is much of the same. It needs a name, for example, holiday display, a vendor, a part number, and an alternate part number if one is needed. As with vendor parts, we can assign specific locations as well as determine the Pricebook zone, if it's returnable, if it's a manual order, as well as manage which products are included within the kit. Within the Manage Products tab, we can choose our items and the quantity of those items that's included within the kit. That concludes the Vendor Parts and Vendor Part Kits section. The last tab is for failed UPC scans, which, as mentioned earlier, any items that were scanned that had not been assigned anywhere else in the system. When an item is placed here, we'll be given the option to delete it or add it as a Pricebook item. This concludes today's training on Pricebook in FTx POS.